Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Events Demystify Podcast, your one-stop stop for tangible, technical, and practical planning advice for anyone in the events industry. Tune into today's episode. My featured guest, which I will be introducing soon, will explore and demystify the world of public relations as it relates to events to empower everyone that's in the business and their events to new heights.
Welcome to Events Demystified Podcast, where we explore and demystify the world of in-person, virtual, hybrid event AV production and technology by sharing insightful tips, tricks and tactics to make your events a success. This podcast is brought to you by Tree Fan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency. And your host is Anka Trifan, a technical event planner and producer with almost 2 decades of hands-on technical experience in event production.
With me on the podcast today, I have Megan Ely, CWIP, which stands for Certified Wedding Industry Professional, OFD consulting owner that loves to combine her years of in the trenches event experience with a love of wedding PR to empower her clients to take their businesses to a new height. Megan is also a Wedding Wire education expert and a regular contributor to Wedding Planner Magazine, Wedding Business Magazine, Kirasource, and SpecialEvents.com. Megan represents her clients globally and has earned them coverage with many esteemed publications, and she's been honored by Special Events as one of the top 25 young professionals in the event industry, while BizBash more recently named her one of the top 10 Clubhouse accounts to follow in 2021. And now it is my great pleasure to welcome Megan Ely to the show. Welcome! Such an exciting time to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you so much for the warm welcome.
To kick us off, Megan, tell me, what is something that you are so passionate about, both on a personal level, if you want to share, and a professional level? Something that would light your soul on fire when you start talking about it.
That's such a great question, right? There, I kind of go in a couple different ways, if I may. The first one is as a publicist, which you kindly introduced me as, I'm very passionate about making sure people have a voice in the industry and on behalf of the industry, that we represent, like when we talk about going through crisis, going through pandemic and all the different things, and even in better times, I'm very passionate, yes, about PR, but making sure that anyone listening feels empowered to have a voice and be that expert and realize how all the different things that they already know and how they can go ahead and leverage it. So that's that. And I would also, if I may, because you said personally as well, I'm also from a personal standpoint, and you and I have talked a little bit about this before, I'm also deeply interested in the idea of being able to streamline, this doesn't sound very sexy, but streamlining your day, automating things to be able to really have the life that you want. You and I are both working parents, and we've talked about it behind the scenes a little bit. So being able to still enjoy those snow days going down the big hills and the driveway and all that, but still being able to get work done behind the scenes. So I've got a few things that I'm particularly passionate about.
I love it. I don't think there's actually one person that is passionate about just one thing as much as I was trying to nail it down, to one thing after I read the book, One Thing. And I'm like, there's just no way.
There's just no way. There's just no way. I love all the things.
I know. I mean, it could possibly happen to some people. For me, it's just not, fortunately, at this moment in my life, achievable. I'm working towards it. So here's one other question that I have for you, because you mentioned PR. So in so many words, tell me and our audience, how did you get where you are? And what was one main struggle that you needed to overcome in order to get here?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's so funny. You would not believe this. This is an absolutely true story though, is I got into the world of PR because in high school, I took a career test. You know, when you put in all your interests and all the things, and out popped public relations. And I thought, oh, that sounds kind of cool. And once I realized what it was,
You're like,
it
what
really
is
was.
that?
Yeah, what is it? And over time, I realized it was, and it's funny because I would tell parents, like, when they said, what do you want to go to college for? And I would say PR. And I didn't really know what that meant, but everyone was very on board with the idea of me going and saying I'd be good at it. So finally I decided I should probably actually figure out what it was. That's in the Stone Ages before, internet was as readily accessible. And I looked it up, and the idea of media relations, working with the media, I've always had such a deep appreciation of it. And so it made sense to go in that direction. I went to school for it. I loved every single class I ever took in it. I did a number of internships. I actually found my way to the Nike World headquarters in Beaverton, Oregon. And I worked there for,
Where we both probably crossed paths and we didn't even know it.
yeah, who even knows? And so, and I did some very cool things. I did take a year, actually, and did a year of service in AmeriCorps. So I actually worked with children for about a year and really enjoyed doing that. But what it came down to was I had a path I had to decide on. I had a little bit of a love for events in the wedding industry. And this is a very young, early in my career, but I also really loved PR. So I decided to go into events to start. I had the energy, went out and did it. I did corporate, social. I did a lot of weddings as well. Most people think all I did was weddings, but I actually did a ton of different kinds of events over the years. But it always went back to just loving public relations. Like, I would do 95% of my day was events. I booked, I did catering, I did the wine tastings, I did all the things, but my boss allowed me to do some PR and marketing kind of side projects as long as it didn't affect my day to day. And that's where I loved it the most. So I will fast forward a bunch of years. I do a bunch of years of events, did about 1,000 different kinds over the years, and then decided to go out on my own. That's a longer story, but I had made the decision to go out on my own. The intention was, it was 2009. I just accepted a director of catering job. I will tell you, I was actually going to be probably one of the highest paid directors of catering I was like 27 in my region. It seemed like all the stars would align to do that for a few years and then go out on my own in PR. And plans have a way of changing. I ended up, and I share this very openly because I hope it inspires others. I ended up working for someone who was not who they had presented themselves to be. I felt unsafe at work. I was not just unhappy, but it was not the right environment. And so I actually, after 3 weeks, put in my notice and made a rare decision in a direction I normally wouldn't, a brave decision to start my company 2 years earlier than expected. So that's how I started OFD 13 years ago. I took a brave leap, which is not always like me, but I guess in my mid to late 20s, I guess I had less tied to me. So I felt like I could leap more.
And I think that's a great tip to take anyone that is in that time of their career where they can still afford to make a lot of choices and sometimes even wrong choices. If something doesn't work out, you can always start again and do it again, right? When you're
Yes.
like in your 40s and 50s, I feel like the level of risk at which you want to do those things is much higher. Not that it's not possible, but
Sure.
it just takes a whole lot more of you. And honestly, it's hard to retrain your thought process to be again that brave and courageous to embark on a career path that, is completely different than probably what you did before. Here's one
Correct.
question that I have for you though. What do you feel like it was the most important lesson that you learned during that time that you might want to share with our audience?
Yeah. And it goes back to kind of, you'd asked a little bit about challenges as well. And I kind of want to tie that into this question here of that big life lesson is, I've got to tell you, when I think of all the challenges faced in being a small business owner, and I know we share, I'm sure, several, and people out there, I would share with them as well. But truly, as much as it's been joyful to be a parent, I have an 8-year-old son. He's wonderful. Becoming a parent, becoming a mom and a small business owner and being, high achiever and all those, that was even more challenging than I ever expected. It was being a small business owner and trying to set up my own maternity leave, which is near impossible feat. Finally getting full-time coverage at daycare, but the kid's sick all the time and always coming home. I mean, it is just an unbelievable stuff. Going through the pandemic, right? And having virtual school and having to sit with my child every day because he has an IEP and trying to run a company in crisis, right? All of those. So I would say navigating the world of being a working parent who unapologetically loves their job, unapologetically wants to succeed. That was very hard. So in terms of like the lesson I learned, that's a great question is, I had Oliver when I think I was about 4 years into the company. So it was on steadier ground, but it certainly was not where it is now, right? And I remember starting to create these boundaries before I went on my quote unquote maternity leave, which was barely one, but was a little bit of one. And I remember having to set a boundary. I was due like in April, and I was maybe talking to people in like January, February, and I had to actually have to go to them and say, I would love to work with you. Thank you for your interest, but I cannot until I'm back in June 1 or whatever that is. And the fact is, now I don't have my services are for Event Pro, so I don't have a timestamp where someone might have like a May event, right? So they may say, I want to work with you. So to go to them and say, I would love to do this. I know it's February now. I cannot start till June 1. And they said, okay, I will wait then. And I thought to myself, isn't that a powerful lesson that if you have tried to commit to exceptionalism truly and really worked hard to be a thought leader through PR, to be of service to other people, to be a recognized leader, I'm very involved in associations as well, to do all the things right. When the time comes to say, I want to work with you, but not right now, again, I know some things are connected to events. So maybe it means not this event, but one down the road. If you create that level of exceptionalism, people are willing to say, all right, I will wait. And that's magic bullet right there. And that was a very humbling experience. It took some fear out of me setting boundaries. You know what I mean? Like now I can say, at the time of this recording, I run wedding industry speakers, and we're in the middle of the winter, as we alluded with the snow. We're not taking new speakers until late spring. I mean, that's a 4 to 5 month lead time. We have who we have. We're trying to get through this next variant, and we're unapologetic about it, and people understand. And I think I would have been operating the business in more of a fear-based if I hadn't gone through that lesson all those years ago.
A couple of things that you mentioned. One of them that stood out to me is the fact, and I like that, the fact that you use the word exceptionalism as opposed to perfection. Those are
Yes.
two different things that can describe something similar, but it is not similar. And I love
Correct.
everything that has to do with this idea of setting boundaries, because honestly, I am one of those people that I have a hard time with boundaries as
Mhm.
well. I mean, I don't think I understood the concept of boundaries growing up ever, because I did not have any boundaries. And then as an adult, having to
Mhm.
actually put some boundaries in place for myself and feel like they're not putting myself in a box or constraints, that was a hard thing to learn. And I'm still learning. I'm nowhere close to
Mhm.
like being at the point where I'm like, oh yeah, boundaries are great for me. And I'm just going to like, set up all this structure of things that would protect me from sometimes even myself, right? But
Correct.
I love that you mentioned those things, because I think it's so important, especially as small business owners and as mothers and wives and spouses and everything in between, friends and all the things that we
Mhm.
are, to be able to still function at the highest level, having had those boundaries in place.
Absolutely. And I think, may I add to that, that I found that over time there is power in the word because. If you can say, what I learned when working in hotels, right, is that there was a certain level of service we could not operate under. I worked at a 5-star, 5-diamond property. And for me, I learned that there's certain levels that we can't operate under. We have to create these, we have to do it this certain way with maybe some flexibility, but we have to create an environment in order to be exceptional for our guests. Right. And so that's how I brought it into my company. When people come to me and, working in PR, people come to me and say, well, I want it right now. And I said, well, if you contract with me, I need 30 days to create a strategy. And here's why. There's power in word in this because of this. And if I can explain that succinctly in a way that's logical to people, they'll say, okay, I understand why you've set this boundary of I need this time to be with you. When I talk to people now about not taking new clients till April, May time period, listen, at the time of this recording, the Omicron variant is pummeling things again. We're moving to virtual. I need to be able to coordinate the efforts with my current speakers who have to cancel flights and move things around and replace other speakers. And I cannot give attention to new people. It's kind of like setting those boundaries and explaining why it does make a difference. I think reasonable people get it. Maybe I'm wrong, but
No, I think they do, especially under such different and special circumstances that we live through right now. Hold that thought as I want to take one short moment to give a shout
Okay.
out to our main sponsors and supporter, Trifan Events. Before we move any further, I wanted to give a quick shout out to our main sponsor, Trifan Events, which is a boutique event planning and production agency that will come alongside you, offering personalized event planning and technical support, strategic event design, production and technology management, and flawless execution for live, virtual, and hybrid events. The team at Trifan Events is passionate about planning and producing event experiences that get people involved with true moments of interaction, engagement, and co-creation, while offering white glove treatment throughout the entire planning process, enabling you to reach your event goals with the use of creativity, production tools, and event technology. Find out how Trifan Events can plan and produce your event become memorable. Go to trifanevents.com. So this is the part that I love the most, Megan, and that is where I'm going to ask you a round of rapid fire questions. So
I'm ready.
first thing that comes to mind, let it come out, okay?
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
Okay. The perfect venue is.
The perfect venue. The perfect venue to me, it's less about what it looks like and it's more about the accommodating and wonderful staff. It's coming in and feeling like kind of that valued guest that you've got, I've got to say, this may sound funny, but I love a good venue when I'm sitting at a banquet table and I'm wearing black and then they come and they switch out my napkin to black. Like that's what I think is a great venue. One that is level of hospitality. You feel welcomed coming in the door. I love great food and wine pairings as well. And it's just the thoughtful experience beginning, middle, and end. So for me, it's less about the walls that encompass it or even the beautiful tented areas. And it's more about that outstanding staff that is committed to that utmost level of details.
Spoken like a true hotelier that's
Right?
worked in a 5-star venue.
I know the black napkin man. I was just at a 4-diamond property. I was staying at the Sanderling. It was wonderful during the holidays. And I walked into our bathroom in the hotel, right? And they had a black washcloth. And I love that because that's for people like me with my makeup. And I was like, now that is a classy touch that I'll appreciate every time.
I love it. Okay, your ideal client is?
That is great. My ideal client is someone in the wedding industry who typically they are vacillating between B2C and B2B. So they're still in the trenches of the wedding industry, right? They're still servicing couples, maybe not as many as they used to, but they've walked the walk. They are people who have a lot to say, a lot of opinions about, educating couples. And they come to me and they've seen enough success that they're ready to share their expertise, share their insight with other wedding pros. And they see a value in that. And for a lot of them, ideally, they're looking to do that in a way to create a sustainable next part of their career, if that makes sense. So it's like they've done the events, maybe they're still doing it for now, but they're ready to take their awesome, everything they've learned and really dedicate it to bettering the next generation of wedding professionals. And in turn, that gives them a chance to, really offer diversified revenue income for themselves. That's really the ideal client.
When I think of that, actually, I think my friend Andrew Robbie, that totally fits the picture. I need to make an introduction. Side note.
I love it.
Okay, next one. The most entertaining virtual or hybrid event has to have.
Okay, so this is an intimidating question, knowing what you do, because I should say something very...
You should not say anything that does not come as the first thing in your mind.
Okay? I was going to say, because I did. It really comes down to the people attending. And let me tell you why. Yes, it comes to the technology and streamline, like it makes a huge difference, right? But having people with a good attitude about being in virtual, because I know we're all people, right? We all want to be with each other. That's not always going to work right now. So people who come in with the right attitude and ready to learn and ready to have fun, that's what makes a virtual event. The minute you asked that, I thought about the National Society of Black Wedding and Event Pros in their inaugural year. I'm a partner of theirs, and they hosted a holiday party virtually. And a lot of us have been on Zoom for a million months. And I got to tell you, they brought down the house. And I think they used Zoom and a few other kind of regular things, but they just all had great attitudes and said, you know what? It'd be better all to be together raising a glass, but we can't. So let's have fun this way. That's
I
what
love
matters to
that.
me. Mhm.
I love that. Sometimes in my industry, we always look at it, especially when we bring on new people, we look at hiring for attitude more than we hire for skill set.
Yes.
Because the idea is you can always teach someone a set of skills, but when it comes to attitude, that's really hard to teach someone to have a
Mhm.
good attitude all the time, especially
Correct.
when you face challenges, right? And
Mhm.
don't tell me there's any event out there that has not faced some challenges, right?
100%. I do the same for my company. There's a lot you can train. I would rather have someone with a great attitude and some semblance of a hospitality background, whether it be like restaurants or something like that, so they understand what it's like.
Love it. What is
Mhm.
one piece of advice you were given that you still follow today?
When I first started OFD, as I mentioned, I was 2 years earlier than expected, right? And so at this point, I had almost no budget. I think I could set aside because I didn't have a job. I had to pay for my life. And so I had about $600 set aside to start OFD, and 100 of it went to getting my LLC. So I really had $500. So I didn't have a lot to spend. And I remember sitting down, I sat down with my good friend, Nita Whittleton, still a good friend, Classic Party Rentals of Virginia. She's the type of person I very much admired her company. I still do. And she said to me, Megan, I need you to buy the book Never Eat Alone. Now, I will tell you, I had like no money, but I think I bought a used copy for $6. I'm so glad I did. And what Keith Ferrazzi says in that book, and I hold to it, is your net work is your net worth. What that says to me is the people you surround yourself with, that's where your value is. And I think I have seen that in so many different versions in my life, all the different things I've done, and especially during times of crisis. I love that advice. I've always followed it. So Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone.
I love it. I think if anything that I can take away from this like period of a pandemic and COVID is the realization of how important that is of an advice, because that's when I
Mhm.
started actually feeling the need to apply it to my life. Because I'm generally
Mhm.
more of a lone wolfer and I can just go sort of like alphas don't run in packs and I'll just do my own thing and whatever. But then I realized how important it is to have those kind of people around you that would, even if they're not the greatest help, but they're your support. Emotional support
Yes.
means a lot when you're a single business owner having to do it all. And I didn't
Correct.
give it enough credit until I'm like, man, COVID sort of like brought it out into the wild. And I'm like, I got to deal with this and I have to figure out how I'm going to solve this. So I
Uh-huh.
love that you mentioned that. Okay, here's one personal last fire
I'm
question.
ready. I'm ready. I'm ready.
What is one thing that you feel like people often tend to get wrong about you?
Okay. So I come off, rightfully so, as very type A. I am. I'm very type A. I'm very type A. I'm very organized. I have high expectations of everything. I'm particularly very organized about my time. Like if you pick one thing that, because we're all organized and mine is time, right? So they're not wrong on that. But people in general think that's my whole life, that everything is run like a synchronized Olympic swim team. But there are things that, because I'm so focused on these things, there's a lot of things people would be surprised that I let go. My husband thinks it's the funniest thing. He's like, if people could just see your sock drawer and understand how little you care about what that looks like, or how I load the dishwasher is just like, how did you, that's so off on how it should be.
Oh my
And
gosh,
oh my
you're
gosh.
speaking my language right now
Okay,
because I
good,
was just
good,
having
good.
a fight with my husband about it. I'm like,
Yeah.
how could you possibly not load the dishwasher this way? Because it makes
Yeah.
so much sense. Like what you're doing, it makes no perfect sense. And he's like,
Oh,
why does that matter? It's a
yes. So you're making my
dishwasher.
way to the alone. Very well. Because here's what it comes down to. What it comes down to is I'm a big fan of eliminating decisions. I'd rather focus on what's
Yep.
the most important decisions. Where do I really need to put my energy 1,000%? And it doesn't mean I ignore everything else. It just means that stuff just doesn't matter. Like the
Yep.
dishes will get clean. Maybe they won't. Depends on your dishwasher. But I'm not worse for wear because of what that looks like. And I've saved myself 10 minutes. Right. And so that's what people are surprised at, that if they see how many decisions I eliminate around me, including what I care less about, they'd say, oh, I just didn't expect you to be like that. I thought you were like that in every sense of it. But there's actually parts of me that are quite laid back, because I couldn't imagine being the way I feel about organization, boundaries, time, and all of that. If I can't imagine being a person, my blood pressure would go through the roof trying to put that in all of my life. Right.
I agree. You know what? I'm sort of like the same way with you
Yeah.
on that. You know, I put a lot of energy in specific things that I care about and I'm focused on.
Yeah.
And everything else, I'm totally okay if it just falls to the side. And I'm actually sometimes the same way I would get, my friends say, like, I didn't expect you to like not care about this thing. I'm like, well, yeah, I care about certain things, but I don't have to care about everything, because the type of energy, nuclear type of energy that I put on the things that I care, if I were to basically use that in everything else, I would be dying in like a very short period of time, because there's no way you can sustain that. So here's another question for you as we come to a close here, Megan. How do you keep your mind and your body, soul healthy and in the best shape possible in order to be able to put the energy that you need and the focus that you need in growing your business?
Well, to be transparent, I wish I could say I was great at that, right? I mean, there are parts of me that are great at that, and there are parts of me that willfully are a work in progress. I would say, and that's being as transparent as possible. I am not where I want to be in some aspects of my wellness, but I recognize that. So that's at least like I know I got a problem. You know what I mean? Like when it comes to that's the first step. So for me, there's a couple of things that work very well. One, I'm very committed to my sleep. Like I have to shut off. I have to be committed to that. I need some wind down time, and that just has to happen. There are times where me working after a certain period of time at night, even though it has to get done, it's of no benefit to anybody. What I'm going to say, I'm going to say something very pandemic-y, if you don't mind, to really answer you. I feel like such a trope
I
here.
love it. Say it.
My Peloton has changed my life. Like I never left the house, obviously, because of the pandemic. I was virtual school, all the things. Something had to change. And so I am a competitive gal. I budgeted, saved, got the Peloton, and I've loved it. I've loved biking with other people virtually. Even if I can just jump on for 20 minutes, it's great to get a good sweat. And I feel like that's something I'm doing for my own wellness. And again, it's such a pandemic like checklist, right? But I was really glad to do that. Like it was good for me, I should say, and my husband. So
I love it. I thought you were gonna say like the meter thing, the one where you actually work out in the meter and
yeah, that's you're either one or the other. But for me, it's that Peloton and putting on a little Britney Spears and riding with some of my wedding friends. Like that.
I
That's
love
just
it.
really it's helped my mental wellness too.
Very good. Fitness and working out for me has been really like a saving grace as well. So I can relate to that. Now, in closing, Megan, what is one PR piece of advice you can give small business owners in the event industry, or maybe event professionals that are seeking to better position themselves for success this year?
If you want to just start practicing by connecting with the media, one of the best things you can do is join a free site called Help a Reporter Out. It's called HARO for short, helpareporterout.com. Help a Reporter is a fantastic free tool that says, you know what, everybody's an expert at something. Media people, journalists are looking for writers. And so what they do is Monday through Friday, 3 times a day, with the exception of holidays, they will have people come in and like you get an email, you sign up for free, right? You get an email 3 times a day, and it's an extensive list of bona fide journalists who are looking for experts. And it could be like, I'm looking for working parents. I'm looking for dog owners. I'm looking for special event people. And what you can do is literally just click on the person and answer their questions. It's a great way to just kind of get started.
So how do you sort through like miles and miles of
Miles
emails
of
that
it.
come to your, yeah.
Yeah, know your keywords. So for me, it's wedding, right?
Yeah.
So if I get an email from Haro and there's 70 queries that I need to get through quickly, what I'll do is I'll run a search on just the word wedding in it and see what pops up. You might have certain keywords virtual and that pops up. And that's the best way to do it, I would say.
I love it. Well, Megan, this was such a pleasure to actually get to talk to you. We have connected before, and every time we've done it, I loved it. I feel like I could do this again very soon. So who knows what the year brings, right? But what I want to ask you is, for anyone from our audience, extensive audience, if there's something that maybe they have questions about and would like to connect with you to find out more about you, where can they do that?
Absolutely. You can find me over at ofdconsulting.com. That's the best way to connect. From there, it takes you to my Instagram, OFD Consulting, my wedding industry speakers, but that's always a great place to start.
Fantastic. Well, it was a great pleasure to have you. Thank you for sharing all your insights and your things that you've learned and challenges and struggles. I mean, I love the fact that we got to do this. I hope to see you again, and I hope you stay warm and cozy.
You too, friend. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Okay, friends, this is it for today's episode. I certainly hope that you're able to take away the few nuggets of wisdom that Megan has shared and implement them in your life as we speak. Thank you for listening. Do stay tuned for our next episode, airing out pretty soon.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this podcast, please take a moment to review it, rate it, and share it with other event professionals that could benefit from it. Connect with us on social at Events Demystified Podcast. We would love to hear from you and what you're up to. If you'd like to learn more about Tree Fan Event services and find out if we're a good fit in supporting your event, can we help your event be successful with a 20-minute free consultation? Link in the episode's notes. Thanks for tuning in.